Hey everyone! So I have just finished filming 6 videos and I'm looking up because I am now sitting because I was standing for those 6 videos. But I have 2 more videos to film, including this one, and this one is going to be my book review, well, part 2 for Lord of Shadows. So, part 2 of this video is going to be this whole chunk of book right here, and it's from chapter 13 to the end of chapter 22. It's about 250 pages. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and get started, shall we? So, I just took it out. No, I didn't. It's right here. So, I ended the last, video with the part where, the squad is in the Seelie Court Fairyland. I always say Fairyland, that's not what it's called. And they got rescued by a woman named Neen. And so I ended it with being like, who is this woman? And I had a theory that she was some kind of family member, that she was maybe Mark's mom, and I wasn't sure who she was, but I edited that part out of my video because I thought it was kind of dumb, and I didn't want to put in a theory that was like going to be totally wrong. And then I read the next page, and I wasn't far off. So I will insert the little part that I took out of the last video because I was not completely wrong. And there's like a parting in this hill or something, and this woman comes out, and she's like, "I'm Neen. I think that's how you want to. I think that's how. I mean, that's how I'm pronouncing her name." And she's like, "I will aid you and not harm you, but now come quickly." And so I'm like, I haven't read on from this point, but I'm like, who is this woman? Who is she? And so as soon as I read this, I had a little bit of a theory that I wrote down. It's probably not right. I don't know if it is. Like I said, haven't continued reading. But I was like, is she maybe Mark's mother? I'm pretty sure that I know they mentioned who the mom was, and it's not her. So I don't know why that was the first thing that came to mind. I was like, well, why else would she help them? But we're gonna find out. So on page 255, that is where Neen is like, yes, I am your aunt. I am your mother's sister. And so that's basically why she helped them. And then also a little bit down the page, the name of the book is said. It says, I knew you would not survive the Lord of Shadows' tricks without aid. Lord of Shadows. That's the name of the book. Alright, so like I say at the beginning of all my book reviews, the way I do this is I make a lot of notes in my books, and I make a little note of whatever I want to talk about, and I kind of just go through them and talk about and ramble and fangirl over whatever it was that I made a note of. So let's continue with doing that, shall we? So on page 259, I have a thing that says, I wonder when we'll be able to see her again. I barely remember her and Aileen. Okay, so they talked about Helen. Neen was telling them about Helen. Mark and Helen have different fairy names, and so Mark wanted to be called Mark. And I wrote a note that I wonder when we're going to be able to see Helen again, because since she's went away, we've just wanted her back. Aileen, she just showed up on Shadowhunters and 2 episodes ago, so I don't really remember too much about them. I don't think they were in this so much, and so, well, in the books in general, so I want them back. So on page 268, there is a quote here, or a piece of dialogue, and it says, there have been Parabatai in the past who started hating each other. Think of Lucian Greymark and Valentine Morgenstern. And I was just like, wow, there's no need to bring up the past. On page 271, the first page of chapter 14, this is when the queen comes in to get Julian, and she's like, I need you to look into the scrying glass to, like, look at what's happening. And I was just like, okay, Dumbledore. It just reminded me of the whole thing when Dumbledore has Harry look at a memory in the thing. And so, in this scrying glass, Julian basically sees his uncle Arthur dying. And I totally forgot about the possibility that Arthur could be a person to spill Blackthorn blood. I don't know why I forgot that he was a Blackthorn. I didn't forget, but I was just like, oh yeah, he's a Blackthorn. He could also be you. So he basically, like, sacrificed himself to save his family, which I thought was very heroic and brave of him. Oh yeah, I wrote that it reminds me of the Mummy when they're, like, resurrecting the one mummy princess. And also I wrote that it was, like, such a nasty description of, like, there were places the skin had peeled away and moss grew on the bones and dried tendons, and it was such a vivid description I could see it in my head, and I was like, ugh, nasty. And also, last but not least, I'm very sorry about Arthur. I was sad to see Arthur gone. I was sad to see Julian's reaction to seeing that. That was very unfortunate. I put my thing down a little bit so I don't have to look up as much. But my next quote here, my next mark here was on page 278. And I wrote, I would love to see this on screen. I keep seeing this through the Harry Potter and Mummy lenses. So like the whole thing where Julian is looking into the Skyring glass, where Annabelle is being risen, and so it'd be really cool to see that like in action. And then number 2, I was not expecting Annabelle to be like for Malcolm to raise her and then for her to kill him. I was not expecting that, so that was really interesting. And number 3, I wrote, I keep imagining the doll. Annabelle. Have you guys seen Annabelle and or The Conjuring? The Conjuring is one of my favorite scary movies ever, and it's terrifying, and Annabelle is just terrifying. Then, on page 280, after all this happens, after the Seelie Queen and Julian saw Arthur die, Annabelle get risen, the Seelie Queen basically tells Julian, she's like, the curse of the Curbitite, I know how to break it. And so, obviously, from the beginning of the series, this series until now, we know that, Julian and Emma are in love with each other, but they're parabatai, so they can't like be together, or else like bad things will happen. So Julian is just like intrigued by this comment that the Seelie Queen made, and so he's like gonna try and like figure out as much as he can about this so that he can be with Emma. Then on page 292, I'm trying to look up as much as possible, but I wrote, we keep bringing up Sebastian. Also, who is it that the Queen wants back? Oh, because they're talking to the Seelie Queen, and Emma's like, oh yeah, you allied yourself with Sebastian Morgenstern, and you helped him wage the Dark War, and blah, blah, blah. And so, like, why do we keep bringing up Sebastian? Because he's crazy. But also the Queen is trying to make a, what's it called? She's trying to make a deal with the Shadowhunters so that she can get what she wants, so the Shadowhunters can get what they want, but it's like she's trying to get somebody back from the Unseelie Court, and so like I'm wondering who that is. I've seen theories that maybe she had a kid with Sebastian, so maybe she wants the kid back, if that's even true. That would be absolutely insane, and I could totally see where Cassandra Clare could make another series based on like the wrath of Sebastian's son or daughter or whatever. And so yeah, I don't know, I haven't finished the book yet. I have 200 pages left, and I will post my review for the last 200 pages on Monday, but at this point I don't know. Alright, so there is a part 2 called Fool, and so the next thing I have here was at the beginning of chapter 15, and where we left off with the rest of the crew back in LA. They had to leave the Institute, and they were portaled to the London Institute, and I was like, oh my god, we're back at the London Institute, where my favorite Shadowhunters trilogy took place, and I just had a lot of feelings, because the Clockwork series, the Infernal Devices trilogy, is my favorite out of all of the books that have been published from this world by Cassandra Clare, and I just had a lot of feelings being back at this institute. So I have a note here, and it says the weapons were carefully locked away. They're talking about the institute and what it looks like. And the weapons were carefully locked away. He didn't know how to sell candlesticks on the street, and though they were the most valuable editions of books in the enormous library, most of them had been scribbled in by some idiot named Will H. And just overwhelmed by feelings. Oh, Will Herondale, the famous Will Herondale, being brought up again in this book. And then on the next page, they bring up Jessamine. Do you remember Jessamine, right? The ghost in the London Institute, who was a character in the series, but then she died and then she became a ghost. But, Jessamine. So she actually, like, has some dialogue a little bit later in the book, but oh my god. So the next note that I have here has to do with Gwen and Diana, and I just thought that was a cute little pairing that's happening there, that Gwen is so interested in Diana, and Diana is she's intrigued by him also, but she doesn't really want to get involved, so it's just interesting. And then there was a quote by Diana that I really liked on page 309, and she's talking to, who is she talking to? I think she's talking to Emma or somebody. And she's like, oh, the cohort, they are a well-known faction in the council. Like all groups who exist primarily to hate, they believe that they speak for a silent majority. that everyone despises downworlders as they do, and they believe opposition to the cultists is a moral cowardice, or at best whining from those who feel inconvenienced by it. And I just really like Diana. She is just great. Okay, and then this is another one of my favorite parts that I've read so far, and it's something that Kit said. Well, not that he said, but that he's like thinking. And so it's on page 312, and he says, Parabatai were strange, so close, yet it wasn't a marriage, yet it was more than a best friendship. There was no real analog in the mundane world, and it drew him, the idea of it, of being connected to someone like that. The way all the dangerous and beautiful things of the Shadowhunter world drew him in. Maybe Ty, ... And so Kit just, like, brought to life what I've always thought about the Parabatai bond, and how, like, intrigued and fascinated I've always been by it, because it's like, people are like, the Parabatai are so connected, and they're so just, it's crazy to me. And so then he's like, maybe Ty can be a Parabatai, and I was like, oh my god, you're like seriously thinking about that. But then I was like, don't do that, because then you might be in the same situation that Emma and Julian are in, and so then that's a whole other set of problems. And then on page 322, they're talking about someone had scrawled the initials JB plus LH into the paint by the window, and I was like confused as to who that was. I was trying to, something Blackhorn and something Herondale. If you know, tell me, because I don't know why I was so confused by that, because I still don't understand who that is. And then on page 326, just continuing to be washed over by the feels, because Bridget had led Emma to a bedroom she seemed to have picked out ahead of time, and Emma soon found out why. There were 2 height charts scribbled on the plaster, the kind you got by standing someone against the wall and drawing a line just above their head with the dates. One was marked Will Herondale and the other James Carstairs. And Jem is my favorite character in the Infernal Devices series. Magnus Bane is my favorite character, period, because he's in all the books. He is just a given for me. Jace, I think, was my favorite character in TMI. Yeah. But yeah, then she finds photographs of all of them, of Tessa, of Will, and Jem, and it's just... And on page 333, we're continuing with the story, and there's a moment between Livy and Jules. And so I always get, because it's such a big Blackthorn family, and so Julian is the 3rd oldest, because it's Helen, Mark, Julian, and then it's like the twins, Livy and Ty, and then Drew and Tavi. And so Drew and Tavi aren't in this as much because they're much younger, but Drew also has like a very big part a little bit later on that I just started to get into with Jamie a little bit later on. I don't know if they pronounce it Jamie or Jaime. I kind of say it both ways when I'm reading. I don't know why, but considering, because I was going to say in Mexican, in Spanish, Jaime is Jamie and Jamie is Jaime. So I don't know how they like pronounce it and how they want to pronounce it in the book, but I kind of like interchange. And so I like got like teary-eyed. I love this moment between the brother and sister, because Livy, she was like, I want to be like you, Jules. Not this second, not right now, but someday. I want to take care of people, other Shadowhunters, people who need me. I want to run an institute. And that was just such a lovely moment, because Julian was so afraid of his younger brothers and sisters like being angry with him, and just not knowing how they would react. So the fact that Livy like was like, I want to grow up to be like you, that like really hit Julian hard, and he felt like such a weight leave off his chest, and I just thought that was such a great moment between them. And so then we get to the part where Julian, Emma, and Christina are going to leave. And so Mark is just funny. So Julian looks back at Mark, and he was standing with his hands behind his back, exchanging a mistrustful look with the carved stone gnome. Your pretense does not fool me, gnome, he muttered. My eyes will be upon you. And I just thought that was funny. And then there was another part on this same page, on these same pages, that just was so cute. And so they're leaving, right? And so Julian goes to the trunk, and he opens up the trunk, and he sees Tavi just scrunched up in the corner, and he looks up at him, and he's like, I want to go too. And then he's like, Julian sighed and began to roll up his sleeves. A brother's work was never done. And that was just so cute that Tabby wanted to go, so we hid in the trunk. That was adorable. And then, okay, so they're leaving, and then they get to the, like, train where they were gonna go or whatever, and so Christina starts, like, being in crazy major pain. Her wrist starts bleeding and looks like it's being cut. They realize that it was because of when they were in Fairy, and Mark and Christina got binded by a fairy, and so when they came back to the human world, mundane world, it, like, did something to them, and so the farther away they got from each other, the more it hurt. And I wrote here, I'm, like, low-key kind of entertained by these binding spells. Now Emma and Julian have to be alone on this trip, and so I was like, And then I wrote, I've literally never been so conflicted with a ship than I have with Mark and Christina. She studied fairies because of him. She, like, focused her field of study because of Mark. And the scene where Christina gets back to the Institute and Mark runs out and they, like, crash together and they're like, the pain goes away, and it's like, it was so dramatic and so, like, novela-like, and I was just like, I love this so much. I do really love the ideas when, like, a couple had known each other since they were kids, but there's difficulties between Christina and Diego right now, and especially with Mark and Kieran. Kieran doesn't remember anything that happened, so he doesn't know why Mark is being so distant from him, but what Kieran did, I don't think that's something that Mark can so easily forgive. And even if he did, I don't know if he'd still even want to be with him. And so, like, I feel like, you know, they're using Kieran right now, but I don't think that Mark and Kieran are going to end up together. And also, I don't even know what to think about with Diego, because we haven't gotten too much of him anyways in what I've read, but I just really love the idea of Mark and Christina together. I feel like they bring out the good in each other, and it's just, they complement each other so well, and they're both so just, I feel like they work really well together, so I'm really rooting for my Mark and Christina ship to end up working out. I'm also not one to really, like, ship people either. Like, that was kind of a new concept to me when I, like, got on Tumblr. I was like, wow, people actually do this, and this was only a few years ago. But I used to just, like, read books and be like, okay, well, this couple that's going to be together, I really like them. I hardly ever do not like couples that end up together in the books, but in this instance, I really want Mark and Christina to end up together. And then there's a scene where Diana is talking to Gia Penhallow in you know, wherever they were. And that Zara has been put forth as the new great Shadowhunter of her generation, the new Jace Herondale. And I'm like, and as I read that, the meme of, like, oh, I'm so sorry, sweetie, that you'd be compared to so-and-so, that's what happened to me, but with Zara and Jace. How would you compare Zara to Jace? That's so offensive. Like, Jace and Zara couldn't be more opposite. And so I just took offense, because Jace is bae, and Jace is my fave, and so I was offended. and then a little bit later on page 399, Kit and Ty and Livy go off to the Shadow market, and they need to be rescued, and so Magnus comes to the rescue, and we got another scene with Magnus in it, and he has to help Livy because she got hurt. And then we get back to the Institute because Livy got hurt, and Magnus needs to try and heal her. And then Alec comes out again, and then Alec mentions the kids, and I was just like, Raph and Cassandra Clare can literally go on forever with writing series about these characters. There's just so many characters, and we just keep having more characters, and I wouldn't even be mad at that. And then there was another part that just warmed my heart, and it's on page 412, and Christina is teaching Alec Spanish lullabies for Raph, and my heart just melted. I was just, can you imagine Alec learning these lullabies and singing in Spanish to Raph? And that just warmed my heart. And then, on page 439, the newest character that we've only heard about, but haven't actually seen, Jamie. So he finally comes, and he needs to talk to Christina, but he doesn't want to be known yet, so he kind of, like, runs into Drew, and she is kind of helping him hide right now. She's like, oh yeah, that she saw a Shadowhunter with tattoos and runes, which I don't think we've ever really seen before, which I thought was interesting. And so yeah, we get that whole scene where Drew runs into Jamie, and then as I'm reading a little bit further on, she's still trying to help him hide. As far as I've gotten in the book, Jamie has not talked to Christina yet, so I don't know how that whole thing is going to go. but this is what is happening right now. And I have one last note here, which I thought was funny, and it was on page 442. I read until page at the end of chapter 22, so page like 503. I didn't have any notes in the last 50 pages for some reason. I don't think anything crazy happened, and I didn't feel like fangirling anything, so I don't have any notes there. But I thought this last part was funny, and it was all the family mottos. And so Emma and Julian are talking, and she's like, "Oh, the Lightwood family motto is we mean well." And Julian is like, "Oh, so what's the Herondale motto?" And if you don't know what your last name is, you're probably a Herondale. And I just thought that was funny, because Jace had like 3 or 4 last names before he found out what it really was. And so Emma bursts out laughing, and she's like, "What about the Carstairs?" And she's like, "We have a sword. Blunt instruments are for losers." And Julian was like, "Oh, for the Morgensterns. When in doubt, start a war." And I was just like, wow, these are all really accurate. And then Emma was like, "How about, has even one of us ever been good? Like, ever. Seriously." And I love that scene, because not only was that funny, but it was Julian and Emma, like, just being friends and being the parabatai that they once were once again. And it was just a lighthearted, fun moment, conversation between the two of them. And I'm, like, losing my voice. My throat hurts a little bit from all these videos that I've been doing. But yeah, I do know that Julian and Emma have talked to Annabelle. They fought off a demon in the church where she was risen, and all that good stuff. So right now I am on page 504. I'm at the very beginning of chapter 23. There's about 200 pages left in the book. I will have those finished and completed by Sunday night, and I will have my review up and posted by Monday, probably Monday night. But also the booktubeathon starts on Monday, so you will see a week-long worth of videos for that. Yeah, so that was part 2 of my review, the second 250 pages of the book, so like the middle. I'm sure a whole bunch of crazy is going to happen in these last 200 pages, so I'll probably have a whole bunch of little notesies there. I just saw Clary, oh god. So yeah, please go ahead and leave any comments down below. Please do not spoil me of the last 200 pages, so I've only read up to the end of chapter 22, so please don't spoil me from chapter 23 forward. But yeah, anything else I would love to discuss with all of you. I have one more video to film, that is my Shadowhunters episode 16 reaction and review. So I'm going to do that right now, and then I'm going to start editing and uploading everything. It's going to take me hours, but yeah, I need to upload everything, and I can't really prolong the videos from different days because I wanted to post these all throughout the week, but I didn't get a chance to film and upload till today, so they're all just going to come out today. But yeah, so that is it for this video. I will see you in my next one. Like I said, please leave any comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!